We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
Okay, so what would yours be? If you had to pick if there were no rules,
okay,
and you could pick any exotic pet to have, and let's take aside all the moral issues and the ethical issues.
Okay.
What would it be?
So if I could own any exotic animal as a pet,
Yep.
what would it be? Probably an elephant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I figured you would say that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
makes
you
sense.
could ride it.
Sure.
Taking away all of the ethical quandaries of doing so. Yeah,
Yep,
I could ride the elephant around.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Take it to the grocery store.
Sure. I mean, I don't think it could get there very quick. Elephants don't move very fast. Mm-hmm. I mean, they can charge fast, but they don't run fast.
No.
So yeah, I'd like to have an elephant. They're pretty cool. They're smart.
They're very, very smart.
So
they're good animals.
What would you pick?
There's a lot that I would pick, but lately, this is just my lately thing, you know? Kind of the same with books. Like, I don't really have a favorite book. It's just what's my favorite book right now.
Yeah.
So my favorite thing right now is going to be a wombat.
A wombat?
Yes. I recently saw what a wombat looks like, and I really like them. They're cute.
Oh, yeah. They're kind of, they're like guinea pig sort of things.
Yeah, they look like mini bears.
Mm-hmm. They're pretty cute.
Yeah, I saw this. This is from pangovet.com.
Okay.
It's a wild animal that you cannot tame, even after years in captivity. Your wombat will always attempt to escape and may bite you in the process. Wombats produce more than 100 pieces of poop a day. So
that is a lot of poop.
Yeah. The website's like, do not get a wombat. Do not.
Please don't. For the love of God, do not get a wombat.
Yeah. Like it shits like a rabbit almost.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, they're super, super adorable. They do look like tiny little bears. They look like tiny little bears with skunk faces, maybe?
I don't know. Their faces are bear faces.
Maybe.
They're so cute. I want one. And I was thinking about it because Gordon Ramsay calls Guy a wombat in Kitchen Nightmares, and I thought that was just the funniest thing. And I'm like, is it bad to be a wombat? I don't think it is, though. I think it's a compliment, not an insult. That's my opinion. Okay, so what is this all about? Why are we asking these really hard-hitting, difficult questions to open this? Well, it's because our first topic is going to be about a big cat in the UK. But first of all, this is Slaying Monsters.
That's right.
We got Matt across the table.
Mortal wombat.
So cute. And I'm EJ. Yes, this is Slaying Monsters, and we're going to talk about some crazy shit that's been happening this month.
Oh, yeah, it's time for another Fortean Roundup.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about all of the weird and unusual news that has come across the plate this month. There's been a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of thievery this month.
I feel like this first story does have to do with thievery.
Well, a little bit.
Because you shouldn't be...
Indirectly.
Yes.
Yeah, indirectly. So, yeah, this was a news article that was on the Devon Live news page. Devon, UK, obviously. And this was Big Cat Found Dead near busy M5 junction. So this is kind of a follow-up to the big cats in the UK story that we did. I believe it was last time we were talking about the various reports of big cats that we have seen all for the last 50 or so years in the UK.
Mm-hmm. Very sad.
Yeah, so just to recap, there have been numerous sightings of large cats. They're usually when we talk about them, we talk about them being like panther type cats. A lot of times we call them black cats, but I think that's more of just the photos that we had of them were in black and white, and it's just creepier and cooler to look at them and be like, oh, it's a big black cat. Like, that's a scary thing, right?
And it's a panther.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But there have been claims of these large cats living on the fringes of the UK countryside for, I mean, going on 50 years at this point. This article is actually from December, believe it or not.
Damn.
But this is, I think this is worth talking about because of the follow-up, where they had found the evidence of big cats living in the UK. Yeah. A driver claimed that he saw the body of a big cat lying beside the freeway. They call it a motorway there. Mm-hmm. The M5, which is a motorway around Bristol.
I think it might have been in the article, or it might have been in Reddit when because I was reading about like on the Devon subreddit, and this was an old discussion as well. But they were just anyway. I don't know where I read this, but there's like speculation that they don't really like the media or the police to know about it, so they kind of. Or is it the police that goes in undercover without...
Right, that the police don't like the media to know about it.
So they just clean it up, kind of, you know... What is it?
Yeah,
Mum's the word? Is that what they say?
Yeah, mum's the word.
Bob's your uncle?
Bob's your uncle. Bob's your uncle means something else.
I think that means like you're on. Like, yes, you're right.
Oh, so if you say, I think they go in and clean up those big cats, mum's the word, then someone would respond to you and say, oh, Bob's your uncle.
I think so. A phrase commonly used in the UK, it means, and there it is, and there you have it.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
So it's not you're right. It's just like, and there you have it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there was a British Ian Malcolm, that's what he would say.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking too.
Well, Bob's your uncle.
Bob's your uncle. Gotcha. Okay, so anyway,
so there was a body of a big cat found lying at the side of the road. The person who reported it said that it was far too large to be a domestic cat, which of course makes everybody think about the Beast of Exmoor and all these other mysterious cryptid type cats that have been reported in the UK. I guess they cleaned it up and now it's gone.
Yeah,
that's kind of the story.
But there are many more, and I think there was speculation that this all kind of happened after the UK started to crack down on exotic animal owners.
So it's interesting because the time that you see the rise and these reports start to appear in the UK is like the 60s and 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And that does, in fact, coincide with a crackdown on exotic animal trade and possession in the UK. Yeah. And so it makes a lot of sense that people who might have, they had exotic animals at one point, and then all of these new laws start being put in place, and it's a hell of a lot easier for you to just get rid of the animal than it is to find a zoo that can take it or go through the proper channels, or if you've lived with the animal and you care about it, you might not want to like euthanize it, right? Which would be the other possibility.
Yeah, definitely. Or perhaps pay a fine because maybe you don't have all the paperwork.
Well, and that's I mean, you do all of these things because you don't want to pay the fine. You want to get rid of the animal.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious to know if it's breeding out there, if there's going to become, or if there is. Well, there's clearly a population. If this is as old as the 60s, there's a breeding population.
Well, the question then is, have there been enough to have an existent breeding population that has propagated since the 1960s? Or are we just seeing history essentially repeat itself, where there's always going to be people who try to skirt the law and own these animals, and they're always going to get loose?
Exactly. Like it could be a couple of things here. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, it's not a cryptid really, but
it's totally
it's very unusual.
No, it's totally a cryptid.
But it's not a cryptid, it's an animal. It exists. Isn't a cryptid a not real thing until it's a real thing, and then it's not a cryptid anymore?
Well, so that's a funny that's a funny interpretation of cryptozoology, because technically, so most of the more quote unquote realistic branches of cryptozoology are just technically zoology, but the giant squid was a cryptid. The thylacine has always been a cryptid, and these mysterious cats, they've been in cryptozoology books as long as I've been reading them. So I absolutely classify this as a cryptid. This is as much a cryptid as the Loch Ness Monster, for sure. Yeah.
But like if I had a giant ball python in Saskatchewan,
Okay.
and and it was let loose,
Yes.
would it become a cryptid because it left
Absolutely.
my house?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why?
Because out-of-place animals is a whole subset of cryptozoological research.
Out of place animals is...
That's literally what they're called, out-of-place animals. Yeah.
Huh. Okay,
Do
then.
you remember when we went to the Museum of Cryptozoology in Portland, Maine?
Yes.
There was a snake skin that they found in a park somewhere in Maine.
Yes.
And they were like, this is an anaconda or a boa constrictor skin.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be in this park in Maine, but they had it there.
Yeah.
It's in the Museum of Cryptozoology. It's cryptozoological.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that's fine. You can have that. I'm going to give that to you. That's cool. That's
Sure.
cool. But, like, also, it's not like we're talking about a dragon.
Right.
It's an actual animal that is classified.
Sure.
So, I don't know. To me, that's really stretching it. But I understand. That's my opinion. But I know that that's just an opinion. And I know that that's a classification then of cryptozoology. That's fine.
There are kind of two schools of thought of this, where there is the school of thought that believes that cryptozoology is plesiosaurs in lakes and dragons and I don't know, mythical, not real animals, that sort of thing. And then zoology would be this, like zoology would be out of place cats and giant squid and the coelacanth and that sort of thing. But there's a lot of people that lump all of these together and say,
Sure.
no, and I think probably rightly so, because if you look at, well, maybe the next story we can talk about, sometimes people think that they see an animal that is cryptozoological, and it ends up being a completely normal zoological animal.
Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of like shaky on it. I think I'm just too much of a purist. I'm like, if it's a dragon, then it's cryptozoology. Or if it's a modern day Paranthropus boisei, then that's cryptozoology.
Okay.
But if it's a classified animal that exists and we know it exists, but it's just somewhere out of place, then that's an animal.
I see what you're saying. Like, if this was an animal, like a Black Panther that was a completely new species of Black Panther, then it's cryptozoology. But the fact that it is a species of Black Panther that we know of, just in a place that it doesn't belong, then it's not.
Yeah.
That's kind of your logic.
Yes.
Well, let me throw this at you then.
Oh, okay.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
What if that is a species of Black Panther that is now truly native to the UK, and we just never knew about it?
Well, that would be very cool.
But isn't that cryptozoology then, because it is a new species?
I guess so.
Do you remember a couple of months ago we talked about the new species of anaconda that they found in the Amazon? And it was more that they had never found this type of green anaconda in the region that it was in. So that is cryptozoology, because this animal was not expected to be here, but it is here. That's almost literally what it is.
To me, that's just finding a new species.
Right. And then it becomes zoology.
I don't know. Okay. I think I'm just too literal. I think I just needed to be the Loch Ness Monster, and then I'm like, all right, okay, that's cryptozoology for sure.
Okay.
But I think I'm just too strict in my ways.
No, I mean, I understand it. Yeah, I understand it. What does the crypto prefix actually mean?
Probably just probably obscured or unknown or strange or something.
It seems to be secret, hidden or covered.
Yeah, I said obscured.
Yeah. So therefore, it's just hidden zoology, right?
Well, in that case, it absolutely is.
See?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, they are hiding in the woods of Devon.
I mean, apparently, or lying alongside the road of Devon.
Yeah, it's very sad. If any, I know we have some UK listeners. Like,
yes.
I'm just curious if you guys have ever seen a big cat, not at a zoo, but out.
Yeah, have you ever seen these animals out there before? I'd love to hear your stories.
Yeah. Share
SlayingMonstersPodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Send them in.
Let us know.
John McGowan, who is a wildlife expert, was quoted as saying, "I once saw a dead cat on the roadside." This is a separate story, but he also saw a dead big cat on the roadside. It was enormous. It could have been up to 9 feet long, including its tail.
Wow.
That's a big cat.
Yeah, like that's like a legit.
It's not like an overgrown bobcat, I think was kind of the point I was getting at.
Yeah, I gotcha.
You know, like they are not, it's not like a big house cat, like a Maine Coon or something like that. It's not just a bobcat that happened to grow super large or
somebody's
whatever.
Bengal that got out.
Yeah. It is a legitimate big cat. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you want to say about the big cats?
I don't have anything else to say to that.
Okay. I think that and our cryptozoology discussion actually segues very nicely into this next story. This was one of those stories where initially, I don't like to talk about stories that were just, I saw a thing and I have no evidence of it. Mm-hmm. Or, here's like a new picture of Sasquatch or something like that, unless there's something that's super concrete and worth discussing in the backstory or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think we just have to talk about this one because of the exposure that happened around it. There were some teenagers who believed that they saw Bigfoot in a Louisiana forest, and they were so scared that they called the police for help. Mm-hmm. And this, when this article first came out initially, I kind of dismissed it because I thought exactly that, like, this is kind of there's nothing evidential in this. Mm-hmm. But then it started to get picked up by all of these news sources, and this is actually from the New York Post, this article that we're specifically going to talk about here. And when that happened, I thought, well, then I guess we better feature it on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, there were a group of high school graduates in southern Louisiana. They were in the Kisatchie National Forest, I believe, outside of Baton Rouge. At their campsite, they saw an animal they saw the eyes of an animal that they swore was Bigfoot. They said that they, quote, heard a growl and saw what appeared to be an animal that had glowing eyes and stood about 5 feet tall. And this is one of the striking things about this report, because if I saw an animal that was 5 feet tall, I would not think that it was Bigfoot.
Yeah, what would you think?
Well, I'm not sure that I would know what it was, but Bigfoot, and we're in the process of talking about this prehistory of Sasquatch series right now. Check out the first episode dropped this Tuesday. It's going to be a really great series. It's already a great series, but Bigfoot traditionally is big. It's not small. So, most of the time when we're talking about a Sasquatch, we're talking about anywhere between like 6 and 9 feet tall. So if I saw glowing red eyes that were 5 feet off the ground, I would say, wow, that's weird. That seems like that is not big enough to be a Sasquatch. Right.
So I was thinking about the eye shine comment that the young men were talking about, and how the creature had like a red eye shine.
Yeah, they claimed that it had a red eye shine.
Yeah, so I was looking into that, and I came across an article from Joe Nickel in the centerforinquiry.org. His article, Bigfoot Eye Shine, A Contradiction. And what prompted me to think about this was that when you're in the woods, you see animals with eye shine all the time, but you'd never see it on people. We just don't have it.
Right.
We don't have what you need to have the shine.
The photoreceptors, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what it made me think was, okay, let's look into this a little bit more. And a lot of animals have different colors depending on a lot of things. But, if you were to look at a bear in the woods, it could be anywhere between like a yellow to like an orangey type color.
Right, like a warmer color.
Yeah, like a warm color. Mm-hmm. And, given what the kids, I call them kids because I'm so old.
They were teenagers.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, sure.
But given what these kids said that they saw and heard, they heard a growl, they saw something 5 foot off the ground, they saw the eye shine. First of all, bipeds don't have eye shine that we know of. Like, we don't, the apes don't, it just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that makes sense to me is that it has to be a bear that probably stood up, because if it was growling, it wasn't happy. So it likely stood up, and that's what they saw, a 5 foot high
Right.
eye shine. That's my theory on that.
Yeah. I mean, so that's a totally viable theory. It depends on what type of growl it was making, too. Because it could have been making that bear growl. It's also possible, you know, I don't know if you remember or not, but when we did our Lizard Man series, we talked about how at night, when you can't quite make out a figure, but you do see the eyes, a lot of times what'll happen is you try to put together a figure that you can see and make out. And we tend to assume that everything is humanoid shaped when it comes to these things, because that's just how we are biologically programmed to respond to something like that. And so in the Lizard Man series that we talked about, the assumption was that they saw the person who reported it, I believe he was a construction worker working late at night or early in the morning, and he saw a barred owl perched atop a stump that made it 5-6 foot off the ground, something like that. And then the rough bark texture of the stump gave it this like scaly skin appearance. So it's always possible that only seeing the eyes at a specific height, but not seeing the body connected to it, that the teenagers might have misconstrued the height of the actual animal. Could have been an owl just
Absolutely.
8-12 inches off the ground, but happened to be sitting on something else. If not an owl, if it was something that actually could make a growl like that, it could have been a big cat also perched a little bit off the ground, which is horrifying.
It's scarier than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me how I think we have this like innate thing in our brains where we're like, okay, if it's close to the ground, it's an animal. It's like 4 feet basically.
Yeah.
If it's way up in the tree, it's probably a bird. But if it's kind of in the middle, in that sweet spot where you could construe it as something standing, all bets are off, man. We don't know what the fuck to think.
Right.
Especially if it's like dark, woods, scary. You don't know what sounds are going. There could be multiple sounds.
Well, and then you hear a growl.
Yeah. Then you hear a growl. I mean, honestly, that sweet spot of like, if the animal decides to somehow land itself between like 5 feet, God, probably even 4 feet.
Right.
And like 8 feet, 7-8 feet, then that's like probably the more likely how you're going to be like, that's a biped. That's a hairy biped.
Well, yeah, because what animal do you see and recognize that you're like, oh, I look at a cat face to face or something like that.
Right. So, and meanwhile, we
Yeah.
absolutely have instances of owls on stumps, owls low in trees. They're big.
Right.
You know, they create a lot of space
Yeah.
and they could form into the tree and make it look like it's part of the tree. And bears, bears will stand up. If they're feeling aggressive, or if they want to sniff around, they'll stand up.
Yeah, sometimes just out of curiosity, bears will stand up. And there was a report of a bear that was in New Jersey, I believe, that had a wounded front paw. I don't know if we talked about this bear or not.
No,
it had a name, because it was seen frequently enough that it had a name, and I don't remember what its name was offhand. But the bear would actually walk around on its back feet and just moved like a person. It actually moved quite a bit like a Sasquatch, and it was because it didn't want to put its front paw down because it was injured.
Yeah, it got very good at walking on 2 feet.
Aw, it was called Petals. Petals the bear.
Petals.
Yeah.
I think Petals got euthanized.
In 2016, Petals was killed by a hunter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah, it was an officially sanctioned hunt. I mean,
Petals was fine.
yeah, I have a lot of opinions about this that we don't need to get into here. I will have the opportunity in a couple of months to express a lot of those opinions.
Oh.
In the future series that we're going to have coming out. But yeah, so Petals was killed by a hunter, but yeah, it was unfortunate because Petals was an injured bear and was trying to get by as best it can. And bears are actually very, very good at adaptation to circumstances like that. I mean, just be like, oh, okay, I'll walk on 2 feet. Oh, okay, I'll go through the trash. Like, that's what they do.
I think most animals are really good at adapting to circumstance.
Yeah.
Like, look at the Savo lions. They adapted.
Absolutely.
They did really well. for a while.
They did great.
He did great.
They did
for a
really
while.
great.
They were living their best life. Yeah.
So I think that the most resonant part of this story and the reason why it got picked up in so many places was because of the Sasquatch angle and because the Bigfoot researchers kind of flocked to that area and picked up that thread as well. The police, for to their credit, never called it a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot or anything like that. They just reported red eyes from the trees, which could be anything.
Yes.
So the last little part of this article that I will talk about, I'll talk about it real briefly here, and then in a week and a half, we will go really deep into it because it just happens to be the perfect timing for this. But this is a quote from the New York Post. The large ape-like creature, just referring to Sasquatch, not what they saw, but Sasquatch in general, also known as Sasquatch, has roots in Native American folklore and has been reported by European settlers since the 1800s.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes. So that is very factually incorrect. The Sasquatch itself does not truly have roots in Native American indigenous folklore. There are creatures in indigenous folklore that share some similarities with the Sasquatch in much the same way that the wild man of the woods that we talked about shares some similarities with the Sasquatch. There's somebody living off on their own. They're human, something like that. So the most common indigenous traditions that are used to align with our modern interpretation of Sasquatch are the Zunukwa and either the Bakwus or the Bookwus. And these were two creatures. Now, the Bookwus were kind of more a humanish creature, and they were more like the wild man of the woods. They were spirits who got separated from their communities, might have been forced out, it might have been an accident, something like that. But they were just living out in the forest. And if you encountered one, they had now become so wild, so feral, that they would try to seduce you over and come live in the forest with them. If you were to actually go off with them and eat their food and join their community, you would also be lost forever and you would be stuck out in the wilderness. Now, associated with these Bakwus or Bookwus were the Zunukwa, and they tend to be female, and we'll call her she, the Zunukwa, she was an immortal beast that possessed the powers of regeneration, and the only way you could kill her was by burning her alive. She is the one that often, when you see the masks, the indigenous masks that they say, oh, this is clearly a Bigfoot, she's the one that they use because she has this very pronounced brow line and she has these pursed red lips. And it looks vaguely kinda sorta ape-like, and that's why people equate them together. But what's important to understand about these things is that these are two pieces of a mythology that for some reason people say, well, these have to be describing a real animal, but they actually don't, because there's also a whole host of other mythology that doesn't, like three-headed serpents and things like that. And it's so interesting to me that the white European settlers that they talk about in this New York Post article happen to come in and then pick out two particular creatures of mythology from a whole pantheon of indigenous mythology and say, these align with the Sasquatch that I'm trying to create, and therefore I am going to identify these as real and reject all of the other mythology that you have created culturally.
Yes.
Three-headed serpent, we don't care about this. I'm not going to try to prove that's real because that's obviously bullshit. But immortal wild woman who steals children and has red lips, yeah, that's my Sasquatch.
Yeah. That's the story you're going to build.
That's the story that they glom onto and that they run with.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So, Yeah, I just have to. I have to push back on that a little bit, because they're really, when you look at the evidence, the quote unquote evidence for these stories being like cultural tales that have been told over the generations in indigenous mythology, it just doesn't add up. It straight up doesn't add up. It only adds up if you're doing this backwards, post hoc reasoning, combing through these tales for things that look like Sasquatch. Instead of just taking them as they are. And with that, we can leave our Sasquatch in the woods and we can travel somewhere else. Where do you want to go?
Speaking of rewriting history,
Yeah.
to fit your agenda.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about the cancellation of the Netflix show Ancient Apocalypse.
Yeah, let's talk about this. And you know what? I missed this show somehow. I'm usually pretty good about this, but this like flew under my radar. I didn't know it had come out. I didn't know that they were working on a season 2, much less a season 1.
Yeah, I was unaware of this.
Yeah, I had no idea. But apparently, this British host, Graham Hancock, has been running around promoting kind of bullshit beliefs based on his poor interpretations of what do you call it?
Archaeological
findings and cultures.
His claim is that there was a global ice age culture. So basically, I think he's saying is that there were white people in the Americas 12,000 years ago, and he's talking about how there's some kind of evidence about how Quetzalcoatl was a tall, fair-skinned, red-haired, blue-eyed guy. Yeah. Which is preposterous. It's all completely false. And he's insulting the intelligence and the cultural richness that does exist on this earth with these amazing countries and cultures by fabricating to fit his own, like you said, this post hoc, and it's not even, honestly, and it isn't even as close to piecing together an old Sasquatch idea. It's not even.
It is absolutely insane.
I don't even know where he gets this.
Quetzalcoatl was a snake with feathers. Like that is what Quetzalcoatl was. It wasn't a red-haired dude. It was a feathered serpent. Like, that's literally what it was in the mythology.
So the cancellation that happened was spurred by the outcry of the indigenous people of the Southwest. I love the Guardian article. They're very quick to say, this is from the article, Hancock, who is not an archaeologist, has attracted the ire of those in the profession, as well as native groups, for pushing a theory that an advanced Ice Age society responsible for modern understandings of maths, architecture, and agriculture was wiped out in floods triggered by comet strikes nearly 12,000 years ago. And I think that's also insulting that, like, the people of our past, of our ancient past, did not come up with these maths, architecture, and agriculture. It had to be some mythical advanced civilization. This is what pisses me off about ancient aliens. It's like, no, the Egyptians were just that good. Right. They were just really intelligent, like all other ancient cultures. Like, they fucking knew what they were doing. Yeah. You asshole.
Yeah. People like this, people like Hancock, tend to have a very compressed view of history, where you think for some reason that because we see the pyramids or we see like very established systems of aqueducts in Mayan culture or something like that, that they had to be taught to these people by someone else because they couldn't possibly have come up with them on their own. Like that, we come at it with this idea that intelligence is too complicated to figure out for these primitive people.
Yeah.
But these people had time and they were smart. There's no reason to believe that we were dumber then.
Absolutely.
There's no reason to believe it. There's no evidence of it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Right.
And the thinly veiled or not veiled at all white supremacy that is overflowing across this is very clear.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, this is a great a quote from a Native American National Park staff member who remains anonymous in the article, but they said, this is embarrassing and a discredit to our agency when we have been working hard to represent Indigenous people and right many historical wrongs. This is just degrading. Beyond even that, your theories make no sense.
Well, yeah, archaeologists are coming forward saying this is ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, your theories make no sense. They're not supported by modern archaeology. It's so infuriating because it's someone who just came up with a theory by saying what if over and over again. Well, what if this happened? What if there was a global culture? How would they have been wiped out? How would this? It's all like an elaborate thought experiment. And then this guy gets a Netflix show off of it.
I don't know how related this is, but I do want to point out Hancock has a son who works at Netflix as a senior manager of unscripted originals. So there could be a connection in there. It could be related. I don't know. But I'm always like, okay, why did he get a show in the first place? Could be. How? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that could play a role. But anyway, I do think that in general, when we do these like thought experiments and we've got money behind it and we've got a platform, just asking questions can be very damaging to cultures that have had to fight tooth and nail to get fucking anything.
Yeah.
Any respect, any rights that they deserve. Like, it's terrible.
It's the erosion of science and critical thinking as well that allows this to fester even more. They have a quote from Hancock in this article that archaeologists have not found material evidence that would convince them of the existence of a lost civilization of Ice Age is not by any means compelling evidence that no such civilization could have existed. So essentially he's saying, just because you didn't find evidence doesn't mean that it didn't exist. It's like, literally that's what it means. If we have not found evidence, it did not exist. Like, literally that is what it means. And he's just like, no, it doesn't. Like, the whole time he's just like, nuh-uh.
Moving the goalpost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous thing to be.
And you haven't done it either, dude. Because if you had found worthwhile evidence of some prehistoric, technological Ice Age society, you could have presented that to, I don't know, Yale. Or somewhere, and actually gotten grants and been able to study it for real and gotten people on your side. But you haven't presented shit.
Well, on Netflix, he's got a show, though, Matt. I mean, it's got to be real, right? This is the thing that pisses me off. It's like we can click a button and be completely brainwashed by this. It doesn't take much. And I think it's really important for us to remember, just as people that consume, that we have to be, God, if there aren't peer-reviewed papers out, and they could even be sketchy, but you just
I mean,
you just have to be careful.
Always look at the source, right?
Autism,
right.
For example.
Yeah, the very, very infamous autism paper by Andrew Wakefield, who spawned this whole rise of the anti-vaccine movement that actually is a great big reason why we're in the mess that we are in right now culturally. And that was published in, I want to say, Nature, The Lancet. It was The Lancet. It got published in The Lancet, and they retracted it. But the thing is, like, that, the retraction is much harder once it's already out there, and he had gotten enough celebrities on his side to though we don't need to talk about vaccinations. That's a whole other branch of all of this shit. It's a whole other
thing. But like you said, you can retract things all you want. The damage is done.
It's totally done. And I mean, unless Netflix, I know that they scrapped the filming for season 2. But unless Netflix is willing to pull this off of their streaming service, or at the very least put a warning ahead of it or something to be like, these claims are not supported by anybody who actually knows what they're talking about. Like, unless they do that, then this shit is going to be allowed to fester.
Yeah, actually, this is also from the article. Established archaeologists have called on Netflix to label the show as science fiction. Yeah. Which I think would be a great first step here. Mm-hmm. Honestly, we could we could probably go on about this forever, but
Yeah.
but I think that probably covers it.
The only little button that I'll put on this one for it is another great quote from this artist. It's actually a really great article.
It is.
Another great quote from this article from a letter sent by the Society of American Archaeology, which called the show preposterous and said, quote, Hancock's narrative emboldens extreme voices that misrepresent archaeological knowledge in order to spread false historical narratives that are overly misogynistic, chauvinistic, racist, and anti-Semitic.
Wow. What's a little bit of a happier story? I personally think that stolen Roswell artifacts is pretty cool and cute and adorable and funny.
You want to talk about this?
I do. I want to talk about it because I think it's really like the outrage over this is adorable.
Well, okay. So first off, I would never advocate theft of anything.
No.
Right? Absolutely
no,
not.
No.
But so this is less of a story. I found this on Reddit. And this was a reposted Facebook post. I haven't actually been able to find any news story about this, but this was posted by one of the professors at Earth Science at New Mexico Military Institute. And I'm going to keep them anonymous for this, but they said, my Roswell crash artifact display at the UFO Museum was vandalized today. The worthless criminals got all the material in the case. And so apparently they had a piece of something that they claimed was part of the material that came off of the Roswell crash. Mm-hmm. And it was on display at the Roswell Crash Museum in Roswell, New Mexico. And someone vandalized the case and stole the artifact. The person who posted this claims that the case, which looks like it's a pretty cheap plastic display case, they claim that it was an argon case that was used for biocontainment of these materials because the materials are apparently radioactive.
Yes, they cause a lot of problems. Particularly one of them was burns to the genitals.
Ooh,
so
horrifying.
Yes. I love this because I feel like this person who wrote this is kind of like, fuck you, you stole my shit. This is what's going to happen to you now. You are cursed.
It kind of is, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, you will suffer great misfortune.
Yes, it's like opening the Dybbuk box.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Exactly.
This is a Dybbuk box of his own here.
But this is, so there's a couple problems with this, right? Number one, Roswell, there wasn't anything radioactive that crashed at Roswell. And I don't know exactly where that reporting even comes from.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. You know more than I do.
Well, the thing that makes me think about radioactive reporting at Roswell is the fact, or the stories from the Aztec crash, where they talked about sweeping the crafts with Geiger counters. Mm-hmm. And Silas Newton totally misunderstanding what Geiger counters were and how they were used. There's the really famous photos from the Roswell crash where you see Air Force officer Jesse Marcel holding pieces of what looked like aluminum sheeting or something like that. And there's been a whole bunch of stories that have been associated with that metal in particular, that it couldn't be cut or that it was like lighter than paper or something, all kinds of stuff like that. What's weird is that material doesn't look anything like the material that was stolen from the Roswell Museum. So I don't know what material they were talking about or how this civilian, right, ended up in possession of this material and was able to just donate it to the museum.
So I'm reading about alpha particles and, like, you know, I'm not a scientist in any way and I don't fully understand this stuff that well.
Great.
But, yeah, right. But hey, this is from EPA.gov, okay?
Okay.
It's not from me. If alpha emitters are inhaled, swallowed, or get into the body through a cut, the alpha particles can damage sensitive living tissue. Maybe that's partly...
Maybe it emits alpha rays.
Yes. I'm saying maybe what the thief has holding in their hands, it could get into their skin through a cut.
It's sure.
And it could hurt them.
Sure. That's possible over many years, probably.
Over many, many, many years, but it will come one day. I think thievery is always not good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is very cute.
It also strikes me as very weird that there would be this material that theoretically is extraterrestrial in origin. I mean, that's the unspoken assumption. The unspoken assumption here is that it's an extraterrestrial material because it's at the Roswell UFO Crash Museum, right?
Yeah.
And yet, we don't have any testing of it. A civilian was allowed to have it in their possession and just keep it for a while, and nobody thinks anything of that.
Maybe it was tested. I mean, it was in an argon gas bath.
This is such a funny thing too, and maybe someone who is better versed in these sorts of things can reach out and explain to us what's going on here. slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com. I'm happy to share the photos of this so you can maybe get a better sense of it, because it really just looks like a plexiglass container, and there's no way of getting the argon into or maintaining the argon inside that container. Like, it's not hooked up to anything, which seems very strange. Argon is a noble gas that's extremely non-reactive, and the atmosphere can be reactive. But generally speaking, when you use argon containers for things, you're using them for old like manuscripts and stuff to prevent the decay that would be caused by our natural environment on the manuscript.
Oh, that's nice.
So
yeah.
I don't know. And again, you know, if somebody knows better than we do, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com.
Just most people probably when it comes to me.
I don't know that argon can actually prevent radiation from leaking through plexiglass.
I don't think so. But, you know, and I can't find anything about that anywhere. There's which tells me that probably not, because it seems like a preposterous idea. But also, what do I know? I thought that was funny.
Yeah, no, it is. So once again, this is another one of these where I wasn't going to talk about this story, but then it came out in the New York Post. It got picked up by enough places. So I guess this must be my rubric. That is in the New York Post. I guess we'll talk about it. So,
is it trashy? We'll talk about it.
Yeah, right. So
here's a trashy one for you.
Here's a trashy one. 12 people saw a UFO above the Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado.
And you know what? There are people that see UFOs all day, every day. I'll say all night, every night. Mostly it's nighttime.
Yeah. Can be both.
Yeah.
Can be both.
But you know, what makes this any different? That was kind of my criticism. I was like, why are we talking about this? There's so many UFO sightings everywhere. But you said the New York Post picked it up.
Yeah, literally. The only reason I'm talking about it is because it was so popular. But yeah, so it was seen by a dozen stage hands, people who had been working the concert. It was after the concert. They were cleaning up around 1 a.m. on June 5th. And this was after a country music star, Ian Munsick, who I'm not familiar with at all, but I'm also not that familiar with country music. So, you know. And they apparently saw a metallic disc over the amphitheater. And unfortunately, because they had all been working the concert, none of them had their phones on them. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, you certainly wouldn't want your phone to go off during the middle of the concert when you were standing backstage or something like that. So nobody had that, and nobody was able to catch a picture of it. But 12 people saw it. It's
funny because I actually believe them more because there's no photo evidence. Because, I don't know, it's like, if it was staged or something, then they would have the phones ready to go, but they didn't, and so it's interesting.
Totally.
So one witness said, "We all saw it fade into nothing as soon as it knew it was being watched," which is interesting and funny. And then, let's see, they emphatically denied that they and their 11 colleagues might have mistaken the object for a satellite or a drone. And this is my favorite line in the article.
Yeah.
Quote, "And it sure wasn't Munsick hitting the road for his next tour stop."
Ha!
I thought that was really funny.
Well, obviously not. Apparently what happened was the aliens wanted to come and see the Ian Munsick concert, and they just missed it. They missed it by a couple hours. You know, they got stuck in extraterrestrial traffic, I guess.
The last Fortean Roundup we did, where it was the Albany dude that was like wants to create little mini atomic
no,
guns?
absolutely, yeah. He thought that the aliens were attracted to nuclear reactors.
Right. I got news for him.
No, the aliens are attracted to Ian Munsick music.
Yes.
So we don't need nuclear reactors. We don't need any of that. We need build the biggest speakers that you can get and blast Ian Munsick music.
Yes.
And we'll bring the aliens here.
Yeah, the aliens will come and probably kill us all, but
I mean, they didn't kill the stagehands.
That's true. But hey, you know what? I don't know anything about Ian Munsick's music or anything because I'm not a country music fan, really. But hey, you know what? Aliens are.
I looked up some of his music, and his popular songs include Long Live Cowgirls, Long Haul, and Cow Shit in the Morning.
Whoa. Cow Shit in the Morning?
Yep.
So the aliens came all the way from Alpha Centauri, or whatever they came from, to listen to a song called Cow Shit in the Morning.
Makes sense.
I mean, these aliens really have good taste.
You can't get that on Alpha Centauri. I strongly disagree with the aliens' taste in music. I'm just going to say that.
This is the most offensive part of this whole show to me, of all the things we talked about.
I was also kind of impressed because the New York Post actually had a picture of the Avro car in their article. I don't know if you saw that.
What's an Avro car?
Oh, we talked about it. It was one of the spaceship, or not spaceships. It was one of the flying discs that were being developed in the 1950s. One of the things that was probably responsible for at least a couple of the sightings of flying saucers back at the time. Certainly one of the reasons why Project Blue Book was interested in people finding out if they had seen saucers or not, right? Because we were building them, so.
Yeah, that looks like
it totally does.
For sure. Yeah. Cool.
But who knows? It seems like it would be a weird time to fly a drone, which would be the most logical example. Mm-hmm. So who knows? Red Rocks is out there. It's in the middle of the Midwest, or in the middle of the West. It's definitely close enough to some of those Air Force bases that they could be throwing weird shit up in the sky.
Or it could be aliens.
So somebody missed out on their Ian Munsick concert and is probably pretty disappointed about it.
Yeah, they're really upset. Which is funnier, I think, in the big scheme of things than the sword that went missing in France, which I really shed a tear about.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, because it's a little piece of history that somebody stole, and that makes me really sad.
Well, yeah, it's I'm probably gonna make you sad about this, but sure.
Oh, are you?
Maybe.
Oh, is it bullshit? Oh my god. All right, here's the headline, guys, from the independent.co.uk.
Yeah, bring us in.
Mystery. As a legendary French sword disappears after 1,300 years stuck in rock.
Yeah.
It is the Durandal sword from Rocamadour, I don't know, of southern France. Okay, tell me why I shouldn't be disappointed by this.
Oh, well, I mean, so this is funny. I knew about this when I was a little kid because in the old Marathon video games, one of the artificial intelligences who was sort of your ally but then went crazy and became kind of a quasi-antagonist was named, I always said Durandal, but it might be Durandal.
I don't know.
I always said Durandal or maybe Durandal. I don't know. That's kind of the more hickish version of it.
Sounds very American.
Like American living in the trailer. I'm Durandal.
Yeah. Durandal.
Allegedly, because I'm sure that most of our listeners are not familiar with this because this is a super obscure little piece of mythology. Mm-hmm. This is a sword that was allegedly, the sword of Charlemagne.
Or one of his knights. Durandal is mentioned in the 11th century poem, The Song of Roland.
Yes.
So Roland is the knight under Charlemagne who received the sword. Apparently from an angel.
Yes, because Roland used the sword to allow Charlemagne's troops to retreat, and he held off an army, allowing them to get away. Apparently, in its hilt is a tooth of St. Peter, the blood of Cassiara. I don't know who that is. Caesiara, a hair of Saint Denis, and a piece of the raiment of Mother Mary of Jesus.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
Mary, Mother of Jesus.
Very powerful.
Yeah. It supposedly it's one of the most powerful swords in existence, much like Excalibur. And apparently it was stuck in a rock since the 12th century. Yeah. Since the 12th century, it has been stuck in a rock at... Pronounce this for me again, EJ?
Dude, I'm not good at this stuff, but I think it's Rocamadour.
Okay. In Rocamadour, France. And July of this year, the sword was stolen by someone.
Yeah, this extremely powerful sword given to Roland by an angel was pulled by some doofus, and now we don't know where it is.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was probably broken off the rock, which is really crazy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would assume that it was embedded in there pretty heavily.
Yeah, so they just snapped it in half and walked away with it. Please don't let this have been some drunk American on spring break or something. Like, it'll probably be an American that did it. I hope not. But please don't let it be an American that did it. Are you telling me this story isn't true?
I don't think that was the real sword.
Oh, you think it was a replication?
Yeah, I think it's a replication. Because apparently the sword has been stolen before.
Oh.
But I don't know that the sword has been returned. I don't think it got found. I think that the sword got stolen, and then they put a new sword in its place, and the sword has been stolen a couple of times.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly would have been shocked if the same sword had managed to not get stolen since the 11th century.
And also not, like, just decay into nothing. It's out there exposed to the elements and stuff.
Yeah, so. That's kind of southern France-ish, so that's going to be humid and... Okay, I'm less sad now.
So this is from the New York Times article that was on reporting on the theft of this sword. And they say that they quote this British historian, Richard Barber, who said that sword that was stolen was placed there in the 1780s to boost tourism.
The 1780s is still pretty old.
The mayor of Rocamadour...
I'm going to butcher it.
Sure.
I don't know.
The mayor of this town, Dominique L'Enfant, actually called it that sword that was stolen a copy of a copy of a copy. And said, the important thing to understand is that it is an emblem of our heritage and that it is no longer there. But the sword itself, I don't think, is the Roland sword, that mystical sword that had, like, teeth and... Mary's clothing in it and all of that stuff. That's not the same sword.
Okay. So it's a representation of cool history and cool...
Yes, it is. And I mean, it was from the 1780s. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that sword was not the original sword that was wielded in the battle by Roland.
Apparently they're very known for their cheese.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So they can be known for that now until they get a replica sword back in there.
Oh, this is hilarious. The sword was removed for a few months in 2011, and it was displayed at a museum. And during that time, they made a copy of it. And then, this is a quote from the New York Times article, officials lost track of which one was the original. So the original might not have been stolen because they might have put the copy in the rock. And now whoever stole it has the copy, but we don't know which one's which anymore.
Oh, man. Well, that's kind of a silly story to end with. Oh, it's an uplifting, heartwarming story.
Thievery?
Yeah. So I'm glad that we ended on a stolen sword.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. Lots of thievery, some, cow shit.
Yeah, some cow shit. I learned that wombats poop 100 poops a day.
That wasn't even one of our stories.
I know, but that was my favorite thing that I learned.
I think my favorite thing that I learned is that they lost track of which the Roland swords was actually the real one.
Yeah, I think the conclusion is it doesn't matter because none of them are real.
That is the most, like, I can just imagine these people making the copy, and then it's exactly like the Dybbuk box, right? You're like, oh yeah, I made a media copy. Like they have a media copy of the sword, and then they're like, here, you take that one. Oh wait, did I give you the right one? Oh well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's all made up anyway.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right then.
Cool.
Well,
there's your Fortean Roundup for this month. Remember, if you see any cool stories that you think we should cover, send them over to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah.
And let us know if you live in the UK and have seen a big cat.
Yes, your big cat stories, your UFO stories, ghost stories. We haven't had a good ghost story for a long time.
I know.
I'd like to get some of that in the rotation again. So yeah. Any of your paranormal encounters, your Fortean experiences, send them over to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear about them. We would love to talk about them on the show. No judgment either way.
Nope, not at all.
Cool. Awesome. As always, everybody, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Really appreciate you getting your earballs on our show.
Earballs?
Earballs.
That's weird. What?
Not like eyeballs.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't judge me.
I'm not judging you.
However you listen to us. Thank you so much for listening. We really, really appreciate all of you out there. Thank you to our supporters.
Thank you so much.
It means a lot. Keeps us in books, keeps this show running, keeps the lights on. So... yeah, until next time, we'll be talking a little bit more about our friend the Sasquatch.
Yay!
And until then, be safe out there.
Bye!
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the Paranormal History Podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways to show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.